quite a complex lifestyle attached to it. Belongs to phylum Platyhelminthes, class Cestoda, order is Cyclophylidae or Tinioidea, genus is Tinea, species is Solium. So it is commonly known as the pork tapeworm because it's usually in the porks, and it is an endoparasite that is inside the host as such, inside the host, that is the pig over here. And it can come to the intestines of the man through the consumption of pork. It is not common in India to see the consumption of pork, but as such, elsewhere in the world, pork consumption in the form of bacon, in the form of ham, in the form of prosciutto, you call it, you name it, you have different kinds of dishes with pork. So it's very common when when you call it, when it is ingested and being affected with teniasis in other parts of the world. So the primary host is man, and the intermediate host is again usually pig. It harbors the larval stages. You get to see that later. And then again, you have quite a number of other hosts such as dog, cattle, sheep, bear, pigs, etc., which act as intermediate hosts. So the mucosal layer of the intestine in the man is where the parasite gets attached to it. And since our digestive system is completely absent in Cestoda, in the tapeworm as such, because of which, what you get to see that the digested food that is already the food that is already digested by the host is absorbed from the intestine of the host into the tapeworm, which that is the food for the tapeworm. So again, it is dorsal-ventrally flattened. It is ribbon or tape-like, because of which it is known as tapeworm. And it's usually opaque white in color, and it's about 1 to 8 meters in length. And then, can live up to 20 years in the host. And then you have pseudometamerism that is present, that is, body is divided into several. It can be up to 800 to 1,000 segments, which are known as proglottids. So it lacks there is no digestive system as such. Food is absorbed directly across the tegument, which is the skin covering the cuticle or the tegument. And adult body has a scolex, which is the holdfast organ. It usually has suckers or retractable or non-retractable, and rostellum or hooks. And then you have a neck, and then you have strobila over here. And neck is where, it is the segments produced asexually. Strobila are the maturing segments, which can consist of the proglottids. So you have different kinds of proglottids over here: immature, mature, and gravid proglottids. And each proglottid has an individual reproductive unit. So this is the scolex, this is the neck, and then, over from here onwards, it is all strobila. So these are the immature proglottids in the front. What happens is the proglottids are all not of the same size. The immature ones are smaller and thinner and in shape, whereas the gravid proglottids are big or large. So these are the mature proglottids with testes and ovary and the yolk gland. These are the gravid proglottid, wherein the uterus is packed with eggs. This is the genital spore. So when it comes to the complex life cycle, you know that it is quite complex because of the fact that there are different kinds of alternative measures that can take place just to see that it survives. So a definitive host has this adult worms, and there is a sexual reproduction taking place, and you have ova which have hexacanth forms, and then you have intermediate hosts also with different kinds of larval stages in present, and you also have asexual reproduction taking place. So this is how an adult tapeworm looks. This is how the ovum of the Taenia species looks, the tapeworm. This is the larval form, Cysticercus larva, and life cycle is as such. You can see in the dog, you have Taenia pisciformis, wherein this is the life cycle as seen. So intermediate host is present. So what happens is basically they're there in the definitive host, then segments are passed through the fecal matter, and then these disseminate into the environment, and then the intermediate host ingest these eggs. Larval stages develop in the intermediate host. Then again, what do you call it? The larval tapeworm is ingested by the final or definitive hosts. So you have different cestode groups again, and I'm going to pause my share and then see whether I've got another PowerPoint regarding the same thing. Resolution. Right. So if you see, the body wall also has the tegument, basement membrane, integumentary muscles, and then you have the parenchymatous tissue also. And this is how is there. In the cestode tegument also, in the same way it is there, except for the fact that you have the mesenchymatous layers over here, and then you also have a syncytial cytoplasm, and you have microvilli, and it should be able to survive the host's intestinal environment also. So as you see, this is the tapeworm, and this is the life cycle as seen in in the pork and the beef tapeworms. And you can get to see that eggs or the proglottids which have the eggs are passed in through the host's fecal matter, and then they are ingested by appropriate intermediate hosts such as cattle or for the beef. And then again the onychosphere formation is seen, and then again the humans are infected. So the eggs hatch into the small intestine, the larva migrates to the muscles, grows into the cysticercus, into the oncosphere, and then they are infected when they ingest a cysticercus in raw or undercooked pork or beef. So you have Taenia solium, which is the pork tapeworm, Taenia saginata, which is the beef tapeworm. And both pork and beef are very commonly and very popularly consumed in mostly in the rest of the world, in fact. So, and they are eaten both raw or undercooked forms. So you name it, you have steak, bacon, prosciutto, ham, and then they are either cured or they are not exactly cooked all the time. So it is very common for the primary host, that is man, to be infected with tapeworms again. So tapeworm, the nutrition in the tapeworm does not have an alimentary canal. So because of which, the already digested food is ingested from the host's intestine. And anaerobic respiration is how it survives in the intestinal environment, and because of which no respiratory organs are available at all. Glycogen, glucose are metabolized. So glycolysis gives a small amount of energy that is present, because of which only glycogen and glucose are slightly released. And excretory system in the tapeworm, if you see, it is a flame cell. So you have excretory canals and flame cells acting as the excretory organs. And nervous system is slightly a little bit better developed, consisting of cerebral ganglia and in the scolex connected by a nerve a ring, a dorsal, and a ventral commissure. And then you have transverse commissures. You've already read about it in the last week, in fact. And again, it is very well known that Taenia solium is a hermaphrodite organism having both the sexes in the same proglottids for that matter. So the mature proglottids have both male and female reproductive organs, and these are developed from the mesenchyme, are present within it. And in Taenia, it is a protandrous, meaning the male the male reproductive organs develop faster as compared to the female reproductive organs. And after copulation, what happens is the mature proglottids lose all the sex organs except the branched uterus, which is filled with fertilized eggs. So these are known as the gravid proglottids. So when it comes to the life cycle, as seen, you have already seen this particular part. What happens is, Taenia completes the cycle in two different hosts. So it is known as a digenetic organism. Man is the primary or definitive hosts, and he or she, they harbor the adult worm, and the intermediate host is the pig, harbors the larval stages. And then there is no asexual regeneration or generation. So life cycle of tapeworm is not very complicated, as we have seen already in the case of liver flukes. So copulation of fertilization is internal. Self-fertilization occurs especially when the sperms fertilize the eggs of the same proglottid by insertion of a cirrus into the vagina. And if it is between two proglottids of the same tapeworm, it is not in the form, it is inside the intestine. So it is not exactly in the form of a long tape as such. What I mean to say is it is coiled, because of which cross fertilization can take place between two mature proglottids. So when that takes place, it is known as cross fertilization. After which the fertilized eggs or zygotes are surrounded by yolk cells, and then these yolk cells are secreted by vitelline glands that contain protein granules, and then they form a shell called as capsule, and then they move out into the uterus, wherein further development takes place. And then this passage of the capsule into the uterus is lubricated by secretion from Mealy's glands. Then, you have the larval form. You've got a beautiful picture on page number 104 of your textbook, for that matter, if you can just, happen to see. Let me see if I've got a picture of it. We'll see this now. This is... I do not have... Right. So when it comes to the larval development, again, you have holoblastic cleavage taking place, unequal, which are with the large megameres, small embryonic cells, which again by repeated division turn into large mesomeres and small micromeres. This is again further divided into to form the embryonic membrane, and then a thin basement membrane, and then you have the morula stage with 6 hooks and penetration glands, and then this is known as the hexacanth embryo with hexacanth membrane, which is known as an oncosphere. So after this oncosphere stage is produced, what happens is almost 30 to 40,000 capsules are produced, and the proglottid is called as a gravid proglottid, which gets detached and comes out through the host fecal matter. So it comes out into the ground. Now, intermediate host acquires infection when the oncospheres that are there in the human excreta are ingested by the pork. So, and also there is this reinfection that can take place through auto-infection by reverse peristalsis. That is when, by any chance, the oncospheres infect the man again. So finally, what happens is, once this once the oncospheres go into the intermediate host, that is either the host of the pig or the cattle, then the hexacanth loses its hook and increases in size, becomes encysted, and then again goes into the bladder, attains a bladder shape. I mean, then it consists of a thick outer cuticle, mesenchymal or germinal layer, and then it is known as the cysticercus form or the cysticercus larval form. So again, if you get to see the infection to the primary host, when the man eats inadequately cooked measly pork, that is when you get this particular infection.
అది వాల్పేపర్ పెడితే బాగుంటుందా? ఏం ట్యాగ్స్ లేకుండా, ఏ నేమ్స్ ఏం లేకుండా.
So that's what. When it comes to the infection to the primary host, the life history of Taenia solium has been given. So when man eats the inadequately cooked measly pork, the cystic circus larva or the bladder worm, as it is known as, enters into the intestine of man, and that is when the proscolex. Yes. Yes. Is there any doubt? I request you to mute yourselves, please. Please mute yourselves. Right. Inadequate means not sufficient, not properly cooked. Pachiga ఉండడం ఇంకా whatever. Okay, so that's what. So this proscolex, what is there on the Cysticircus larva, that gets evaginated or turns inside out, and then you've got the hookers, and then the whole life cycle of the larval form starts again. So you can see it over here, figure 5.25, life history of Taenia solium. So adult tapeworm in the human gut gives the fertilized eggs, which are mature proglottids, to egg capsules that are present in the gravid proglottids, to oncospheres which are inside the gravid proglottids, to gravid proglottids with oncospheres in the human feces. So it comes out of the fecal matter and out of the human body with feces. Then oncospheres in the gut of the pig whenever pig gets to ingest the fecal matter, and then hexacanths in the gut of the pig, they occur because the oncospheres turn into the Cysticircus larval form, and then the hexacanth form, and then they go to the from the gut of the pig to the intestines of the pig to the heart muscles, and then you can get Cysticircus in the striped muscles of the pig. This Cysticircus, when they go into the striped or striated muscle form, it is as if there's some kind of dots on the pork, because of which it is known as measly pork. This, if it is ingested by the human beings, it goes into the intestine, and this is how the whole life cycle again starts. So again, what happens? What is the pathogenicity or the pathology as seen? You can get to see that it causes excessive appetite. There is some kind of a discomfort, pains, weight loss, diarrhea, the nervous discomforts, and sometimes even there is this ingestion of the eggs or the proglottids, wherein the stomach, the oncospheres go into other parts of the man instead of just the intestines. The primary area where it has to go is the intestines, but if it goes into the stomach and it gets digested, or it turns out over there, there is it takes place in auto-infection or regular infections, because of which you have polymorphonuclear leukocytes being infiltrated, and the Cysticircus larva comes out into other parts of the human being, and it is quite an dangerous position for the person, because it is very harmful, goes into the nervous system, causes severe disorders such as brain necrosis, epileptic fits will come, and it is quite fatal. So encystment in the cysticirci in the eyes also causes blindness. So what is exactly necessary to control this, or what exactly can you give? Basic, your deworming solution that you give to your children, basically that albendazole, that will help. And then in case a Cysticircus larva is present elsewhere, you will have to surgically operate it and remove it, because the larval form can stay for years altogether as such. So the albendazole treatment is the best. In fact, if it is present in the intestines, and then in other parts, if there is cystocirrhosis occurring, that is when you'll have to what do you call it? Give do the surgery and then remove the Cysticircus larval forms. So this is the treatment. all the azole ringed medicines will work against the worms. So that's why it's known as deworming. So this is all about the tapeworm. Teniasis is over. Now let us just go through Ascalmentis, the general phylum Ascalmentis, that is the unit 6, the general characters, classification, type study. So we are going to see Ascaris Lumbricoidus, the parasitic adaptations for what do you call it, the Ascariasis. Then what exactly are the parasitic adaptations of helminths? Yes, does anybody have a doubt?
No, ma'am.
All right. So in this chapter, Ascalmenthus, you're going to see the concept of what a pseudocoelom is, the morphological adaptations in such animals, and what exactly are the physiological adaptations. And most of them are again parasitic in nature. Platyhelminthes and Nemathelminthes both are parasitic in nature. Can live as ecto and endo parasites. And the name Ascalmenthus was proposed by Grobel because there is depending on the presence or absence of the coelom, triploblastic animals were actually divided into three major groups: acoelomata, coelomata, and pseudocoelomata. So when there is a coelom present occurring from the mesodermal, that is mesoderm in origin, it is known as the true coelom. So such organisms are known as true coelomates. So internal organs like gut, then the mesenteries, they're all enclosed by this membranous covering, which is known as peritoneum. And so this is the coelomates. I'll just share my screen with you again. I'll open another PowerPoint. Please give me a minute. Again. So these are pseudocoeloms because the nematodes have an outer tube enveloping an inner tube, that is the digestive tract, and between the tubes is a fluid-filled pseudocoelom in which the reproductive system and other systems are found. So the gut is not exactly lined by the peritoneum, so there is no peritoneal lining. So so no proper, like, all this is done by the pseudocoelom, wherein the transport of solutions, electrolytes, proteins, fats is done. So it helps in the protection of internal organs, helping the movement and the excretion of the worm, basically. So in acoelomates, body is filled with mesenchyme. That is what we saw in Platyhelminthes. And so this is in Platyhelminthes and Rhynchochila. But in Annelida, mollusca, arthropods, Annelida, arthropoda, mollusca, echinodermata, chordata, you have the true coelom, which is a fluid-filled cavity. But in Nemathelminthes, you have a pseudocoelom, which is not mesodermal in origin, like I already told you. So the blastocoel persists even after the completion of the embryonic development, and then it has no peritoneal lining, as seen in the true coelomates. So these are known as pseudocoelomates for that reason. So both Platyhelminthes and Ascalmenthus, organisms are parasitic in nature. So they are modified accordingly. That is, their morphology, anatomy, and physiology, and all their functions are adapted for that particular way in which they can survive as parasites inside the body of the hosts or outside of the body of the host, depending upon the kind of parasites that they are. So now if you see the general characteristics of the nematodes, phylum Nematoda, you can get to see that they are bilaterally symmetrical, triploblastic, pseudocoelomates. They have a cylindrical body, and then they are elongated, and you have the distinction between adults and the the young forms basically. So you have they are dioecious, and male is smaller than the female. And at the end, you have a posterior end of the male, we're having a copulatory organ. And some are microscopic, some are large, some are terrestrial, and some are living in, some are parasitic forms. They're aquatic in nature, so freshwater or marine. In fact, at least some of them are aquatic. And then you get to see that anterior end does not have a distinct head. I request you all to mute yourselves. Please mute yourselves. Please mute yourselves. So epidermis is syncytial, that is, all the nuclei are together. There is no particular cytoplasmic cell wall present. Musculature has longitudinal fibers present, and then digestive tract is straight, mouth to anus. There is no musculature except that, you have a well-developed pharynx, which is muscular also, because this food propulsion is through the gut by the contraction of the gut muscles, so that all the food is propelled into the gut. And respiratory circulatory system is absent. Excretory system has canals made up of protonephridia. You have some certain sense organs such as the ciliated pits, papillae, bristles, and eye spots. And they are dioecious, that is, the sexes are separate, like I told you. And males are usually smaller than the females. And you have a copulatory organ present at the end of the male. Gonads are single or double. Eggs are small, microscopic in nature, and they have a chitinous shell. Development is direct or indirect. So this is how it is. The body wall, the hookworm, and all that. I will come to this in in some time. When you come to the classification of this Ascaris, you get to see that it is having 5 classes: Nematoda, Nematomorpha, Rotifera, Gastrotricha, Chinorhyncha. So when it comes to nematodes, they are all roundworms, bilaterally symmetrical, triploblastic, pseudocoelomate organisms. I'm just going to put this. This is the cross section. So let us just kind of look at it. Let this be there. So they're known as roundworms. And then they're bilaterally symmetrical, triploblastic pseudocoelomates, can live in many different areas as moist water, soil, fresh water, sea water, free living, or as parasites. And it can infect the food crops also, or domestic animals. And it is one of the most important parasitic groups present. And it is the body, if you see, it's long, cylindrical, tapering with at both ends. Yes, something similar. I think this gives you an idea. And a body size is highly variable, can range from around 1 millimeter to around 5 centimeters. Examples are Dracunculus, which is a whipworm, and Dictophymarine marinale, which is again several meters in length, in fact. And then head, cilia, segmentation, all of which are not exactly present. Mouth is surrounded by 3 to 6 lips in the majority of the nematodes. And what happens is these lips are absent. So you have a modified organ called as the buccal capsule. You do not have respiratory or circulatory systems present. Digestive tract is again straight right from mouth to anus, in fact. And then you can get to see that the nervous system comprises of a circumpharyngeal ring with having a few ganglia, around 6 anterior and posterior nerves each. And then you have amphids, which are anterior sense organs that are present, and phasmids, which are posterior sense organs, and papillae present in the head and the tail region. Now, excretory system is different in different species of this phylum, for that matter. So we'll get to see as we finish the classes. And mostly dioecious. That is, and then you get to see that the males are smaller than the females. And there are copulatory spicules present near the cloaca. And in the females, the genital opening is present in the middle of the body at the ventral side, for that matter. And development is indirect. At least, there are 4 larval stages present, and it is the 4th larval stage which is the infective stage usually. So there could be or there may not be an intermediate host present, that is during the development. So when it comes to Ascaris lumbricoidus, that is the roundworm, so the examples are Ascaris, Enterobius vermicularis or the threadworm, Ankylostoma duodenale. The spelling is wrong in your textbook. Please, you can correct it if you want to. It is Ankylostoma duodenale, not aduodenale. A is not there. It is duodenale because it is present in the duodenum. So that's the old hookworm. And then you have the Necator americanus, which is another hookworm or known as the American killer. You have other whipworm or the serpent worm or the guinea worm, which is the largest worm actually present. That is the Dracunculus medinensis. Trichuris, which is the whipworm. Trichinella. Bucraria bancrofti causes human filaria, or the elephantiasis, wherein the legs and the different kinds of body parts actually become swollen because of this infection. And then you have Loa loa, which is the African eyeworm. The worms are actually present in the eye, and they live in the eye. You can feel that movement in the eye. And then you have also the Strongyloides cercoralis, which is a threadworm. There are pinworms, threadworms also present. See, I do not know, but it is a basic nematode, which is the pinworm, which is present in the small children whenever they, kind of start scratching their perianal or the anal area. It is the pinworm infection, because of which the children are advised to have deworming every 6 months. So these are also nematodes. So when it comes to the second class, it is class Nematomorpha. Another name for this class is Gaudacia. So common name is the horsehair worms, for that matter. And it is a class of long animals. So you have around up to, these worms are almost 1 meter in length. And they superficially resemble the nematodes. Again, the parasites on insects during larval stages. Adults are free living forms except Nectonema, which is marine. All the others are formed in the fresh water. Triploblastic, again with pseudocoelom. And then you have cloaca in both the sexes in this particular class. And then you have the fact that, the digestive system is quite well developed in the larval forms, but it gets degenerated once it becomes the adult. Then the adults do not feed. Reproduction is the only major function in the adults. And then animals in this phylum do not have an excretory system, because of which they are different from the other classes or other organisms from this phylum. Circulatory, respiratory, excretory systems are all absent. Nervous system with only a circumpharyngeal nerve ring and a midventral nerve cord. Again, if they are dioecious in nature. Fertilization external. Egg develops into a larva, which is known as a gordid larva. Example is Nectonema and Paragordius tricuspidatus. So this is all about class Nematomorpha. When it comes to the next class, which is Rotifers, they're found in freshwater ponds, and most of them are free living in nature. Very few of them live as parasites. All the animals are microscopic in size, and adults again resemble the trophophore larva. And body bilaterally symmetrical, divisible into head, trunk, thorax, or tail, head, trunk, and tail. They're known as wheel animalcules because the anterior part or the end of the body looks like having, as if it has a wheel to it. So it bears a ciliatory apparatus, which is known as a corona. So again, body wall is syncytial in nature, with having a thick cuticle called as a lorica, and most of the tissues are also syncytial. So when I say syncytial, what happens is the cell wall is absent. So it looks as if it is a huge cell having all the organs, in a repetitive manner. Alimentary canal is complete. They have a muscular pharynx. This pharynx is provided with movable jaws known as the mastax. This mastax serves for grinding the food. No respiratory organs, no circulatory organs. Excretory system is having flame cells. Nervous system is simple. So what happens is no nerve cords are present, but only ganglia are present. Eye spots are present. Sexes are separate, that is, they are dioecious, and they exhibit sexual dimorphism also. Again, males are small, degenerate, or even absent. Reproduction is again sexual, and also you can see parthenogenetic in nature. So you have both ovoviviparous and viviparous conditions seen in this particular organisms, and there are no larval forms in the class Rotifers. Examples are Brachiones, Epiphanes, Asplanca, and Concleo. So these are the pictures. You can see the picture of Brachiones rubens that is given in your diagram in your textbook. So when it comes to the classes Gastrotricha and Chinorhyncha, you get to see that in Gastrotricha, they are a small group of free-living aquatic organisms. They are microscopic in nature, and they occur in both marine and freshwater, and body is worm-like, unsegmented. Ventral surface is flat with cilia, and because of cilia, you can expect some amount of locomotion to take place. Cuticle is thin. They can have spines or wart-like structures. This corona is absent. Body wall is again pseudocoelom. Digestive tract is complete, mouth to anus. Mouth is surrounded by bristles. Respiratory circulatory systems are absent. Excretory system has two protonephridia, one or more ventral glands. Nervous system has a cerebral ganglion, two lateral longitudinal nerves. And then, sexes are united, or it can be that only females are present. Reproduction is by sexual, and sexual method, that is, development is direct from the zygote or from the unfertilized ova by parthenogenesis. Example is Ketonotus and Lepidodermella. When it comes to, you can see the figure 6.3 for that matter. You have a mouth, pharynx, cilia, intestine, and anus. And class Chinorhyncha, they're also known as Ichinodera. In this, you can see that there are minute cylindrical animals living on muddy bottoms, usually in shallow marine habitats. You have superficial segmentation, that is, the body only on the outside is segmented as is divided into segments, more specifically 13 rings. Cuticle is spiny, but it does not have any cilia. These animals have a retractable head covered with circlets of spines. Complete digestive system, expanded stomach intestine portion, terminal anus. You have even a retractile ring present to it. You have that picture over here, 6.4. You can just have a look at it. Excretory system has one pair of short protonephridial tubes. And then again, you have a multinucleate but a single flame bulb. Development is indirect. You have different and many larval stages, and metamorphosis is also present. So this is all about the different classes in the nematodes. And when it comes to our study of Ascaris Lumbricoidus, you can see this is the roundworm. So you can see that it is the most common parasite present in the human intestine. So it is the largest intestinal nematode that is present, and it is more common in children. So a single host can have around 1,000 to 5,000 parasites. Please give me a right? So again, it's very common all over, ubiquitous in nature. We have it. It is very prevalent in India, China, Philippines, Korea, everywhere.
And
And
good
if
pictures,
there is, sorry,
pictures give.
picture, sure.
Yes.
Simple. This is the Ascaris Lumbricoidus. And once you go to the college, and if you go to for practicals, sorry, you can get to see the picture. I think when you go to the university, at least in Hyderabad campus, it is there. Ascaris lumbricoidus, both the male and the female, they're there in the what do you call it? The slides are there, not the slides. I mean, they're stored in that
Yeah.
formaldehyde bottles, in fact, for that
Specimens,
the
specimens
specimens.
here.
Yeah, the specimens. So you can just have a look at it. So, right. When it comes to that, they look like earthworms basically. Again, elongated body, cylindrical, tapering at both ends. They're either light brown or pinkish in color. Again, they exhibit sexual dimorphism, male, female, and both that is present. At the same time, the females are longer, measure about around 20 to 40 centimeters in length, 4 to 6 millimeters in diameter. Male is smaller, with a length of around 20 centimeters, and measures around 2 to 4 millimeters in diameter. Body has a cuticle. Minute transverse striations are present. So this shows as if, it looks like segmentation is present, but no, unfortunately, there is no segmentation. So this is known as pseudo segmentation. Cylindrical body has 4 longitudinal streaks of lines. So the 2 narrow ones are dorsal and ventral. 2 thick ones are lateral. Unfortunately, you cannot see that over here, but then all this is present on the body. And then the 2 thick lateral lines enclose the excretory canals, and these are the internal thickenings of the epidermis. So the female has one particular thickening near the mouth, which is guarded by 3 lateral broad lips, which are known as the labia. One lip is mid-dorsal, 2 others are lateroventral. And then you have an amphid, you have around 5 denticles or teeth along the inner margin, sensory papillae on the outer surface, which opens into an amphid or an amphidial gland present on the latero-ventral lip, and they are sensory in nature. So all these papillae and amphids are sensory in nature. And then behind the mouth itself, you have a small excretory pore. And there is sexual dimorphism. And if you see, especially in the posterior end of the males and the females, it is straight in the case of female, but curved in the case of the males, ventrally especially. So in this, you have the cloaca present with 2 curved pineal spicules or copulatory setae, and it is a common aperture for both the digestive and the genital systems. So a very good picture of it is given in your textbook for that matter. You can get to see that. And then there are around 50 to 50 pairs of anal papillae that are present. And so again, a complete digestive system. This is how it is. Reproductive system, excretory system. We'll come to this in some time. Right. So you have anal papillae, postanal papillae, which help in copulation. And in female, the anus is guarded by thick lips again present, and a female genital aperture, the vulva, is situated mid-ventrally, and it is about 1/3 distance from the anterior end. Again, the body wall is having a cuticle, and then the epidermis and the muscle layer. And cuticle is thick, elastic, transparent, and continuous with the cuticular lining of the pharynx and the rectum. Up to that, it is completely continuous in nature. And these are periodically shed off so that, growth of the organism can occur. And again, it has 5 layers. This particular cuticle has 5 layers. They are lipoid layer, cortical or cortex layer containing the keratin. Then matrix, that is spongy and alveolar with sulfur-rich matricin. And then you have a fiber layer of interlacing collagen fibers. Then you have a basement membrane as such. I'm sorry, I could not see earlier that the pictures have some Chinese or some other language naming in it. So we will continue. If possible, what I will do is I will share a better PowerPoint if available once the class gets over. So please bear with this picture. The diagrams are the same. Only thing is you please listen or correlate and collaborate with your textbook. Right. So you have a basement membrane, which is hard, resistant to the digestive juices of the host because they're parasitic in nature. So through the wall and the salts, they're diffusible through it. Now, epidermis or the hypodermis, which is present, forms a syncytial layer below the cuticle. Again, the four longitudinal lines are formed by the thickening of this epidermis. So beneath the
Hypodermis, ma'am.
hypodermis or epidermis, both. In your textbook, they mean the same. That is what is given. Epidermis or hypodermis. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
So beneath this is a layer of the longitudinal muscles. So what happens is alternation of longitudinal and circular muscles are seen in Annelida. So we are talking about nemathelminthes, because of which only the circular muscles that are contractile in nature, usually they are not there. So in Annelida or the earthworm, you have the longitudinal layer, surrounding the circular muscles. So both have their own distinctive function as such. So since we are talking about the more primitive forms before the annelids, so the circular muscles are completely absent altogether. Only the longitudinal muscles are present, which are again divided into 4 different quadrants. And each quadrant has around 150 muscle cells. So if you take this as one quadrant, it has around 150 muscle cells. So this contraction of these muscle cells cause the twisting and the bending of the body. So again, when it comes to the body cavity, it is a pseudocoelom so true coelom is not present. But in the case of Ascaris, externally the body cavity has some muscle cells. Internally, you have the cuticle or the intestine. So it is formed by the breakdown of the connective tissue cells, so that all the visceral organs are loosely hanging around in this particular body cavity. So fibrous tissue is present. Fixed mesenchymal, stellate, giant cells, which are called the pseudocoelomites, are present. Different kinds of cross sections of all the different kinds of nematodes. So this is about it. And when it comes to the digestive system, it is a complete with the formation of mouth, esophagus, intestine, rectum, of the cloaca, and the anus. All of it is present. And then you have the pharynx. The mouth leads to the muscular pharynx, having a triangular lumen and a chitinous lining. The pharyngeal wall has around 3 large branching pharyngeal cells, or the esophageal glands, that open by cuticular ducts into the lumen. So there is even a foregut or a stomatium present, and then pharynx leads into the tubular intestine, and from the intestine you have the midgut extending almost throughout the entire body length. Then there is a small wall present at the junction of the pharynx and the intestine that prevents the food from going back into the pharynx. So this is all about the digestive system. Muscle fibers are absent in the intestine. Intestine has a short dorsoventrally flattened rectum, and this leads to the cloaca, and this is lined by the cuticle. So food of the Ascaris is usually blood or the partially digestive food of the host. It is sucked by the rhythmic pumping action of the pharynx, and the pharyngeal glands secrete the enzymes. So, and the digestion takes place in the intestine but extracellularly. The digested food is absorbed by the intestinal walls, distributed by the pseudocoelomic fluid, and excess food is stored as reserved glycogen and fats in the syncytial epidermis. Undigested food is eliminated periodically through the anus or the cloaca. So when it comes to the respiration, I like There is no particular respiratory organ. Anaerobic respiration is seen. So glycogen is broken down into fats, carbon dioxides, and fatty acids. This is eliminated by the cuticle. So oxygen consumption is because of the body surface whenever there is availability of oxygen. When it comes to the excretory system, it is formed in the form of a hedge. Not sure if you've got an excretory system picture. Yes. So this is the excretory duct or lateral excretory canal. It's in the form of a hedge. You can see that in your textbook in a much better picture, in fact, and has a pair of longitudinal excretory canals that are running throughout the system, and they are embedded one on each of the lateral longitudinal lines. And then midventrally, a short excretory or a terminal canal arises from the transverse canals. The formation of the hedge itself indicates that there is a transverse canal running after, along with the longitudinal excretory canals. So this opens out through a minute common excretory pore, and canals are without cilia or flagella or any kind of flame cells. And you have a huge excretory rennet cell at the juvenile or the young stages, and nucleus is present at the anterior side on the left longitudinal canal in such kind of rennet cell. So Ascaris is a ureotelic animal. That means you have Ascaris excreting urea. We have ammonotelic animals, ureotelic animals, uricotelic animals. Ammonotelic means excretion is ammonia. Ureotelic means excretion is urea. Excretory product, final excretory product is urea. Uricotelic organisms, excretory organs, the final excretory product is uric acid. It as seen in the birds. A monotelic, ureotelic, such ones are seen even in the higher organisms such as the fishes, the birds. That's how it is. The final excretory product. And this is discharged into the pseudocoelom, absorbed by the thin walls of the excretory canals, eliminated through the excretory pore. So some ammonia, urea is also excreted out with the feces through the anus. So again, when it comes to the nervous system, you have a single dorsal ganglion present, a pair of subdorsal ganglia present, and a pair of lateral ganglia, again, which are divided into 6 lateral ganglia, and a pair of large ventral ganglia. If possible, I'll just try to share a better picture. I think the same picture as such is given in your textbook also. I'm trying to share that. Right. So from the nerve ring, you have around 8 nerves arriving anteriorly, and around 6 of them are the labial papillae, as you can see over here. And a mid-dorsal nerve cord runs along. This is the mid-dorsal nerve cord. And then you have these supply the amphids. The amphids are the sensory organs. These are the sensory papillae. Amphids are also sensory organs. And then, connecting the ventral nerve cord with the lateral and the dorsal nerve cords are number of asymmetrically arranged commissures or connectives. And in male worms, what happens is the posterior end, there is innovation, and it is more complicated when as compared to the females, in fact. So then you have tactile labial papillae on the lips, and then you have copulatory genital papillae that is present in the male worm. In fact, you have chemoreceptive amphids, and then you have chemoreceptive phasmids present on either side of the tail. So when it comes to the reproductive system, again, the sexes are separate. A good picture, in fact, better picture than your textbook also, if you can call it. And well-developed or well-defined sexual dimorphism. Both male and female gonads are tubular, continuous with their ducts, hang freely in the pseudocoelom. So when it comes to the male reproductive organs, you see that there is a single long thread-like coiled testes that is lying in the middle of the pseudocoel, and this leads to a vas deferens. This opens into a wide muscular tube, the seminal vesicle, which occupies the posterior third of the body, the posterior area of the body. Seminal vesicle opens into a short musculatory ejaculatory duct. This contains a number of prostate glands present, and these prostate glands secrete certain fluids which help in copulation. Now, the ejaculatory duct opens into the posterior part of the rectum to form the cloaca. So, this is the cloaca. It opens into the posterior part of the rectum. On the dorsal side of the cloaca, you have a pair of muscular sacs called as the penile sacs or the pineal spicules or the spicular pouches. These contain pineal setae or spicules that enclose a spicular sheath. This pineal setae consists of cytoplasmic core surrounded by a thick cuticle. So setae serve in copulation to open into the female genital pore. When it comes to the female reproductive organs, you get to see that there are a pair of ovaries, oviducts, and a uteri and a single vagina present. Right. So the female reproductive organs are double. They have a parallel kind of arrangement, which is representing the didelphic condition as seen in the Ascaris. Now there are two long thread-like ovaries that are present. You can see the ovary. These are the thread-like ovaries. This ovary leads to a corresponding oviduct, which is a broad and a twisted tube. These are the oviducts present. Now, uterus has a thick inner layer of circular muscles and a thin outer layer of oblique muscles. And the proximal part of the uterus serves as a seminal receptacle so that it stores the sperms for fertilization and the fertilized eggs. Now, the cells represent in this part produce the yolk and the shell material. The two uteri unite anteriorly to form a short muscular median vagina, which is lined internally with a cuticle. It opens to the outside midventrally by a transverse gonopore or a vulva. In Ascaris, the gonads are telogenic. So what happens is the germ cells arise from the germinal zone situated at the proximal end of the gonad. Now, when it comes to the life cycle of the roundworm, all the life cycle takes place in only one particular host. So that is why it is known as the monogenetic in nature. So what happens is copulation takes place inside the intestine of the host. During copulation, the male worm attaches its body to the right angle to the female in such a way that the cloacal aperture comes in the opposite of the vulva of the female. So there is penetration taking place, transfer of the sperms takes place, and then the fertilization takes place, that is internal in nature. And then once this is done, the eggs are produced. These fertilized eggs travel down into the uterus where they receive the yolk, become covered by a thick yellow chitinous shell. Then the fertilized eggs leave the mother's body through the gonopore into the host's intestine, and finally they come out through the host's fecal matters. Around 15 to 20,000 eggs are released every day, in fact. And they remain alive for several years in moist soil, and even under adverse or completely bad conditions also they can stay like that. And then under favorable conditions, what happens is that is, you have favorable temperature, moisture and oxygen, eggs undergo spiral and determinate cleavage, and then they come out. And then there is an incubation period that is necessary for them to survive outside the human body, around 10 to 14 days. And then the minute larva or the juvenile form is present, through which they again infect the alimentary canal. So the minute form or the minute larva or the juvenile is formed, and this is present inside the shell. Now this form has an alimentary canal, a nerve ring and an excretory system, and largely looks like rhabditis, which is a free living nematode. So this is known as the rhabditiform larva. Then the juvenile molts twice, and then you have the second rhabditiform larva that is formed, and this is the infective stage. Now, if the embryonated eggs are swallowed by the man by any chance, for that matter, by by ingestion of contaminated food or water, then the juveniles reach the intestines of the man where they hatch from the shells. Then the newly hatched larva has all the adult organs except the reproductive organs, and measures around 0.2 to 0.3 millimeters in length, and it's around 13 to 15 microns in diameter. At this stage, the larva bores through the epithelium, passes through the hepatic portal system to enter into the liver. From the liver, it reaches the heart through the postcaval vein, from where it is transported to the lungs via the pulmonary artery. In the lungs, again, the larva ruptures the capillaries, enters the alveoli. It can live in the alveoli for about 6 days. Different kinds of worms, in fact. So, once it goes into the, it reaches the alveoli of the lungs, it can live about 6 days. Here, it grows, molts for the third time, and becomes the third stage larva. From there, it goes through the bronchi, trachea, through the pharynx, esophagus, stomach. It reaches the throat, where it is swallowed for the second time into the gut. During this journey, this takes place around 10 days. Larva grows from length of 2 to 3 millimeters. And in the intestine, the fourth and the final molting takes place. And in about 8 to 10 weeks, the larva grow into the adult male and females. So average lifespan inside a host is around 12 to 19 months. 12 months means 1 year. 19 means 1.5 to 1 year, 7 months. This is known as extra-intestinal migration. So instead of this part, in fact, if it goes by any chance into the brain or the spinal cord, this is known as the aberrant migration. And such cases, what happens is, it knows it is not in favorable conditions or known environment, because of which there is a calcareous cyst that forms around the larva, and it dies within the cyst. So as you can see, when it comes to the life history, you can summarize it in this way. As given in the CDC. Like CDC is for the Center for Disease Control. Usually it is the best way, wherein you can get to know more about the diseases. So this is how it is about when it comes to Ascaris lumbricoidus. I'm trying to fit in this particular thing in your so that you can see anyway. So the adults, the fertilized eggs pass out, the larvae develop into the eggshell, so they molt twice. It is swallowed by man or intestine. The juveniles hatch over there, go through the intestine, into the mesenteric veins, to the hepatic portal veins, then to the postcaval vein, to the heart, then to the right side of the heart, the pulmonary artery, the lungs, the alveoli, and then over here the third molting take place. Then you have the bronchioles, and from the bronchioles you have the bronchus, the trachea, the glottis, esophagus, intestine, wherein again the fourth molt is taking place, and then they grow back into the adults. So it causes a disease known as ascariasis. So the larval stages are quite harmful as compared to the adult stages for that matter. So severe infection can occur, weakness, anemia, and you have a lot of toxins that are produced depending upon the place where it is there. There is intestinal irritation because there is irritation of the mucosa that where the parasite is present. Toxins are produced over there. Digestion is weak and colic pain can come, and then once it goes into the mucous membrane, it can cause bowel inflammation, which is known as enteritis, and peritonitis. Then migration through the lungs, bronchioles. This causes intense coughing, hemorrhage. You start vomiting blood also sometimes. Inflammation, then this leads to pneumonia. Sometimes during the general circulation, instead of this particular path, the larval forms reach the kidneys, the brain, spinal cord, muscles, cause serious lesions. And about 100 worms are known to destroy the intestine completely. So this can also cause appendicitis and hepatitis. And how do we control this? By using, say, following safe and hygienic methods. That is, thoroughly wash vegetables, fruits before eating, wash your hands, maintain hygienic conditions at home, teaching the children to wash hands before meals. These are the control methods. So when you get to see the morphological and the physiological adaptations by any particular organism, you can get to see that in the parasites especially, they do not have any kind of exoskeleton or endoskeleton. So there is a high. Yes, another 5 minutes and I will finish this. Okay. Right. So the body is filled with a hydraulic skeleton, that is, a fluid filled skeleton for a little bit of flexibility. And then you have a very tough cuticle present so that it can withstand the intestinal, the digestive enzymes. And suppose it goes to the stomach, it should be able to withstand the acids that are present inside the stomach. So the intestinal enzymes and acids should be able to withstand. So it's got a tough, thick cuticle. And then you have locomotory organs that are absent. If at all the organism is supposed to spend its all time in one particular host, there is no point in having locomotory organs. It is not going to travel with its locomotory organs to different parts in the body. It is the larval form, if you see, that develop and that are passed by the circulatory system into the different parts. But as such, they do not have locomotory organs. So these are all parasitic adaptations. And then you also have some hooks and suckers that are present, or you have cement glands that can help in attaching to the mucosal layer or the intestinal layer of the host, so as to it can stay attached to the host. And then again, you have development of adhesive or the anchoring glands, like I told you, the hooks or the cement glands for that matter. And in tapeworm, the scolex base, either sucking pockets or accessory suckers or lateral sucking grooves, or the bothria. In cestodes and nematodes, hooks or the hook-like structures also develop near the cephalic end, which further help in the attachment. And when it comes to within the body, what kind of adaptations? You have the anaerobic respiration, which is a physiological adaptation. So production of energy in the form of aerobic respiration. So what happens is glycolysis takes place, but Krebs cycle as such, aerobic respiration, the complete path is not going to take place. So you have the basic like initial wherein the usage of glycolysis or glycolysis can take place basically. And you have, if you get to see that the partial pressure of oxygen is very low, so this is enough or adequate to support their tissue respiration as such. And the amount of energy required by the parasite is very low, because the only thing that it needs is to see that it propagates. So all the energy that is there, it is only going to be put in the more efficient reproductive system, which is the most important part of that particular organism, that is in the case of parasites. Again, you do not have a digestive system because it is completely degenerate. No point in having one because you're already taking in food from the host. And some organisms produce anti-enzymes, especially the intestinal parasites, so that they can inhibit the digestive enzymes. And this is another method to protect themselves from the gastric juices and the digestive enzymes of the host. Again, the osmotic pressure of the body fluids of the parasite is the same as that of the host, so that there is no particular stress. There is no differentiation in the host and the parasite's fluids as such. So otherwise, the parasite has to spend a lot of energy in only trying to maintain the osmotic pressure of its body fluids. Again, no particular or degenerate sense organs, because of the presence that only it had the sense organs are necessary only to understand the chemical change in the environment. Otherwise, it is not necessary only. So, and again, enhanced reproductive potential, because these parasites' only job is to reproduce. So you have the reproductive potential, which is at a very advanced and an enhanced stages, having multiple larval stages. So all these are basically used only to see that the organism can survive, can propagate. So the larval forms are motile, free swimming, and so that they can go to different places for that matter. Spreading of the disease can take place, and then from they can go to a different host altogether. Once they are there in the same host, once they are completely made the host sick, if they stay in the same host, it is basically nothing but suicide, because they are not going to get any more nutrition. So propagation of that particular organism has to take place. So it has to infect other hosts, because of which it has to go out and disseminate or dispersal of the species to take place. Now, secondary or the intermediate hosts help in this role, or help in the dispersal. And then several larval forms are also present. They can withstand different kinds of unfavorable circumstances by forming encystment, or by producing a thick cuticle. So all of this will help in the propagation. And again, this is generally seen, but there are again other helminth parasites having only a single larval form. So there is only a direct transfer from one host to another, as seen in Ascariasis or Ascaris. So again, multiple larval forms, two different hosts as seen in Fasciola hepatica. Multiple hosts as seen in Clonorchis. So this is all about your Aschelminths and the helminth parasites as such. Next class, we will see the phylum Annelida, that is the coelomates, Annelida arthropoda. Is there anything that you would like to know?
Madam, please end the class. It's time up.
Yes, over. I end the class.